Intergovernmental management is the coming together of different levels of government and is most often visible at times of great tragedy, such as the attacks on September 11, 2001, or great disasters such as Hurricane Katrina, or when a major tornado hits a community. Picket fence federalism is a metaphor created by Terry Sanford when he was governor of the state of North Carolina. It was initially presented in his book, Storm Over the States. The concept implies that bureaucratic specialists at the various levels of government, along with their clientele groups, exercise considerable power over the nature of intergovernmental programs. Bureaucratics or program specialists at national, state, and local government levels for such fields as public housing, vocational education, health and hospitals, and higher education represent the pickets in the picket fence. They communicate with each other in daily work, belong to the same professional organizations, and have similar professional training. They are likely to be in conflict with general purpose government officials, such as mayors, governors, or the president, who attempt to coordinate the vertical power structures or pickets of the picket fence. The general purpose officials are the crosspieces of the fence. And in times such as Hurricane Katrina, these different various groups can be in conflict with each other or have different priorities because they answer to different interest groups. Councils of Governments and Intergovernmental Agreements. A Council of Government, or COG, generally refers to any multi-jurisdictional cooperative arrangement to permit a regional approach to planning, development, transportation, environment, and other problems that affect a region as a whole. Another issue that is prevalent under the U.S. system are mandates. A mandate refers to one level of government requiring another to offer or pay for a program as a matter of law or as a prerequisite to partial or full funding for either the program itself in question or other related programs. An example in the U.S. would be that very often federal funds for highway construction are often tied to mandated speed limits on highways. Let's now take a look at the transformation of governance. There are a variety of factors that changed the nature of the relationship between the national and subnational governments during the 20th and early 21st century. They include the impact of 2 world wars and the Cold War that empowered the national government unlike ever before. There were revolutions in transportation and communication that allowed for instant communications and great advancements in transportation, particularly on highways. There was also the implementation of national values through the 1930s New Deal programs and the 1960s civil rights and anti-poverty programs. Short of court order, the federal government often uses financial incentives or penalties to encourage desired policies, often through mandates and similar functions. Public sector faces many economic problems, including the attainment of the most equitable distribution of income, the maintenance of high employment with stable prices, and the establishment of an efficient pattern of resource allocation. Fiscal federalism argues that the federal government is best at solving the first 2 of those, while the state and local governments can best solve the establishment of an efficient pattern of resource allocation. Grants and aid from the national level of government to local governments may be needed to stimulate local government spending, particularly for national purposes, and to provide for uniform or minimum service levels, as in education, or to compensate citizens of one area for benefits from services they finance that spill over to residents in another area. Spillover benefits are especially frequent in such programs as clean water and air pollution control, health, and education. All too often, the same central question of fiscal federalism is asked in countless congressional and presidential elections. Why can't the citizens of the states just keep their money, meaning have their federal taxes reduced, rather than paying it to the federal government so they can return it in grants and services? The answer is deceptively simple. Not all states are fiscally equal. If there are more poor people in one state, federal welfare funds from other states will in effect subsidize them. Grants by formula or category are the most significant means by which federal monies are transmitted to the states. A grant is simply an intergovernmental transfer of funds or other assets. A grant in aid is the term used for federal or state payments to local governments for specified purposes and usually subject to supervision and review by the granting government or agency in accordance with prescribed standards and requirements. One function of a federal grant in aid is to direct state or local funding to a purpose considered nationally useful by providing federal money on the condition that the jurisdiction receiving it match a certain percentage of it. As the chart indicates, federal grants and aids to state and local governments since the 1960s have increased dramatically. Very often local governments apply for and receive Community Development Block Grants, or CBDG funds. When I was a town manager in several cities in the U.S., we received thousands and millions of dollars in CBDG funds for various projects, including wastewater treatment programs and railway construction. They're very useful and allow for a distribution of funds among the states and local governments. State governors frequently call for less federal intrusion, but they still want the federal dollars. Despite repeated calls from state governors to reverse the flow of power towards the federal government since the New Deal, they continue to seek out and rely on the federal government for financial resources. They seem to want the federal dollars without the federal purse strings. One solution is considered the public choice solution. The idea is to make as much government local as possible, and citizens can vote with their feet. It rejects the concept of welfare economics. When private markets fail, the government has to step in and effectively carry out the public interest, and the government level best suited to do this is the federal government. Under public choice, advocates argue governments are basically inefficient and completely lacking the incentives to perform well unless the expansion of their own programs and the increase of their budgets were involved. The better solution is to place governmental action and expenditures at the lowest possible level, that is, at the local government level. Citizens can vote with their feet. That is, if citizens have access to appropriate information, they would be able to readily compare the levels of taxation to the quality of services they receive. In essence, they would move to the location that has the appropriate services they want at the price they're willing to pay. Welfare reform in the 1990s sought to, in essence, instill public choice in the welfare system. This is part of the devolution revolution. And the ultimate devolution, of course, is to get government out of a particular activity altogether. This could include privatization, which is the use of contracts to provide services previously administered by governments. Let's now turn toward ethics. In the United States, no employee can be required to perform manifestly illegal acts. Using a defense that I was only obeying orders, or what is often called the Nuremberg defense, will not work. There are 4 levels of ethics. There is personal morality, which is your own basic sense of right and wrong. There are professional ethics. Here, public administrators increasingly recognize a set of professional norms and rules that obligate them to act in a certain way. They are often prescribed by professional organizations such as the American Society of Public Administrators or the International City Management Association. Other occupations have similar codes of conduct. The third level of ethics is organizational ethics. Every organization has an environment or culture that includes both formal and informal rules of ethical conduct. Then there are, of course, social ethics. Members of a given society are expected to act in certain ways that both protect the individual and further advance the group as a whole. The challenge to accountability is the extent to which a person must answer to a higher authority, legal or organizational, for one's actions. The higher law defense is often used under these circumstances. And under this defense, no matter what the laws of the state are, there is a higher law to which a person has even greater accountability. Nonprofit organizations have special ethical expectations. Non-governmental or third sector organizations have grown rapidly in number, size, and influence in recent decades. Their role, number, and scale of NGOs have changed considerably. As they have grown, they receive more and more public dollars. This creates a higher ethical obligation to them as opposed to private organizations which work for a profit and generally do not receive government monies. The expanse of NGOs has prompted a reconsideration of the principles that govern them, the way they are organized, and how they operate. They are expected to be financially sustainable, effective, and efficient. As social and political actors, they must adhere to the rules of ethics, honesty, and transparency. They must cultivate their image and reputation because it affects their legitimacy and therefore their survival. This concludes the slideshow. Please complete all the readings before answering the discussion questions and other assignments for the week. Good luck.